Hello, this is Cuban Writer, and I wanted to talk to you today about a subject I've been following recently in social media online. This all began when I was watching a series of scientific videos by a gentleman who calls himself Thunderfoot on YouTube. He had a number of videos illustrating various concepts of science, and I found them quite interesting. He also had a line of videos that critiqued creationist philosophy. And even though I'm a Christian, I think there's a lot about creationist philosophy that probably deserves critiquing. So I watched those videos and enjoyed them quite a bit. And then I became aware of some videos he did critiquing a young lady who was herself critiquing video games. This was a lady by the name of Anita Sarkeesian, and after watching his first critique of one of her videos, I decided to check out her video series for myself and see what she had to say without the commentary. Well, to be honest, I found some aspects of what she had to say were worthy of consideration. She wanted to see women portrayed more positively in video games, and there are probably some video games where women could stand to be portrayed more positively. She wanted to see more female role models as heroines, and I also would like to see that. She had some complaints about the way women were dressed in comparison to men, and this is something that occasionally has bothered me, especially in medieval fantasy. I hate to see men dressed in armor that would seem to be protective, and women dressed in what can best be described as chainmail bikinis. I like a little bit of realism in my fantasy, and it kind of breaks the immersion for me. So she seemed to have some legitimate concerns, but her concerns did not seem to end with the legitimate ones. She went on to assign double standards to the portrayal of men and women in video games without recognizing that that's what she was doing. And she seemed to attribute virtually everything to a phenomenon she called the patriarchy, which is the idea, I think, that everything in society has been orchestrated by men to favor men. And while I do think there are aspects of society that have historically favored men in certain ways, I'm not sure I buy the extreme totalitarian view she seems to hold on this issue. Well, watching Anita Sarkeesian eventually led me to discover something called Gamergate, which, although I've been playing games since I was a little boy, when I had an Apple II computer in the house, and I played Lemonade Stand and some kind of Pac-Man knockoff. I discovered that there was this controversy regarding something called Gamergate. I had never heard of this thing and decided to try and find out something about it. The first thing I found out about it was that it was a group of online gamers who were misogynistic, who hated women, who did not want to see women in the video game industry, either as developers or players. And that struck me as a very negative position, and one that was not supportable. However, I decided to dig a little deeper, because often the first thing you hear about something doesn't really give you the whole story. Well, upon digging deeper, I learned certain facts. Apparently, there had been some concern in the gamer community for some time regarding the truthfulness and ethical practices of certain video game reporting media. I myself usually just watch a YouTube of someone playing a game to find out if I'm interested in buying it. But a lot of people buy magazines or subscribe to online websites where people do video game reviews, and that's how they get their idea of what they'd like to spend money on. Well, this undercurrent of distrust for the gamer media, gaming media, seemed to have existed for some time when someone made an accusation against a female developer saying that she was trading sexual favors for positive reviews of her games. Now, I decided to look into this some more, and it didn't seem like a supportable accusation to me. It looked like it was a disgruntled boyfriend who was upset because she'd left him for someone else and was trying to make trouble for her. Before a lot of people discovered that this accusation probably wasn't on the up and up, they kind of took all of their built-up frustrations with gaming media and jumped all over her. And some people weren't just condemning her actions as unethical. Some people were making a lot of personal insults and even threatening her. And this has subsequently happened to other women who have spoken out on this issue. Now, what occurred to me is that in any group of enough people, you're going to have some jerks. No matter how noble an institution, there are going to be jerks who are going to make trouble. And in our modern online world, there are jerks who don't even need to be part of an organization or even a movement in order to desire to make trouble. They're often referred to as trolls. They just have fun hurting people. Well, I decided to subscribe to a few Gamergate Twitter feeds, to watch some Gamergate YouTube videos, to listen in on meetings that Gamergate people were having with one another. And I discovered, to my surprise, that these people really didn't seem to hate women. A lot of these people were women, and they seemed to have some genuine issues with ethical concerns in gaming. Apparently, trading favors, not sexual favors, but favors in equipment or access for favorable reviews of online games. This made the media untrustworthy, and it meant that gamers didn't always have a reliable means of determining which game they'd like to spend their money on. Well, that's a legitimate concern. And I think they would have remained entirely focused on this concern if it wasn't for the fact that during this initial horrible mistake of the accusation against this young lady who was a developer for trading sexual favors, certain groups of feminists saw the way she was being treated and decided this is a good issue to dig into, to present our point of view, and to create change. So what happened was a lot of feminists began pushing back against Gamergate. In doing so, they created a narrative where everyone in Gamergate was a nerd who was ugly, who was jobless, who was living in their parents' basement, and who had never had sex. This is not an unfamiliar narrative. I've been made fun of for a large portion of my life because my interest didn't match the mainstream, and it was always, you're a pimply-faced nerd living in your parents' basement. Even when that was patently false, it was a nice narrative for them to drag out to make fun of me. And I saw them dragging it out again, and I didn't really like it. I mean, I thought we had made some progress where nerds, geeks, gamers, whatever, where they were accepted just as people with a different hobby. And just when there seemed to be some progress on that issue, now certain feminist groups were labeling all gamers, or any gamer who dared to affiliate themselves with Gamergate, as a horrible, misogynistic, virgin, nerd, jobless, ugly, whatever. Well, that's just not what I was seeing when I was looking into the Gamergate issue. Worse than the general wave of feminism, feminist antagonism towards Gamergate was the media outlets which serviced the gaming community seemed to come out with a lot of very negative articles that reinforced these stereotypes and declared that gamers were dead. It was time to move on from gamers, which left me rather confused about what gaming media was supposed to be catering to, if not to the gaming community who played games and were interested in gaming news. While I myself have never cared about gaming media enough to become a member of Gamergate for the sake of ethics and journalism, which I think is a very important issue, but just not one that touches me deeply in my heart. Although I don't sympathize with Gamergate for that reason, I do find myself sympathizing with them as a group of people who are being maligned in a blanket fashion. Even the women in Gamergate, or women who affiliate themselves with another group called Not My Shield, who basically say, don't use me as an excuse to treat these people badly. As far as I can tell, that's basically what they're after. They're being told that their opinions don't matter and aren't important or are wrong or are hurting women. And it seems like certain feminists, not all feminists, and this is something I think is important because just as all gamers or gamergaters have been grouped together as this evil force, I feel like all feminists are being grouped together as this evil force too. And it's just not true. In any group large enough, there will be bad actors. There are people probably in Gamergate who are misogynists. There are probably people in Gamergate who have made threats. We don't have any proof of this, but it's logical to assume that in any group with sufficient size, that some people in that group are going to be terrible. Similarly, in the feminist movement, there seem to be some people, unfortunately some very popular people, who are just terrible and saying terrible things and making terrible assumptions. And they're hurting people who are a lot like I am. People who have different kinds of hobbies, different kinds of interests, who enjoy video games, and who took issue with something wrong in the gaming community. And they're all being mistreated by people who claim to want equality. And some of these people who are fighting hardest for women should be treated well are treating Gamergate women like garbage. And that just tells me that these people, these group of feminists, aren't the people that I should be looking to determine my attitudes about gender equality. And I don't think they're the people I should be looking to get an unbiased view of Gamergate. I went in myself, I did my research. I listened to what these people were saying to other people and to each other. And yes, some of them are assholes, but most of them aren't. And a lot of them have something interesting to say. If people would just stop taking stereotypes as fact and just start listening to them. So that's my position on Gamergate. That's my understanding of it. And that's why even though ethics in journalism isn't my number one concern, not treating people like garbage is a big concern of mine. That's why I consider myself a feminist, someone who seeks equality between genders. And that's also why I have come to consider myself a supporter of Gamergate. Thank you.